Now, breaking news from WRAL. Coverage you can count on.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Julian Grace. Breaking news at 6. President Joe Biden announced he is ending his re-election campaign. Alice Barr has the latest on his decision.
President Biden today making the seismic decision to step out of the 2024 race for the White House, bringing an abrupt end to a half-century career in politics after a disastrous 90-minute debate raised serious questions about the 81-year-old's fitness for another term in office. In a statement posted on X, the president writing, quote, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." Mr. Biden then endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, for the nomination as the party scrambles to change course before next month's Democratic National Convention with just 4 months until the November election. One of the president's closest allies, Senator Chris Coons, reacting.
He has always put our country first. He has an incredible legacy of service and leadership.
In her own statement, Vice President Harris thanking the president for his service and his endorsement and saying it's her intention to earn and win this nomination and unite the Democratic Party. The news caps a tumultuous week, beginning with the attempted assassination of former President Trump. And after weeks of pressure from Democratic lawmakers increasingly anxious, Mr. Biden could not defeat Mr. Trump. The former president slammed President Biden in an interview with NBC News as the race hits an historic reset.
I don't know. I think that's this scary part of it all, is that we just don't know what anything's going to happen.
Propelling the nation into unknown territory. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Less than an hour after posting the letter ending his re-election bid, Biden posted an endorsement of Kamala Harris on Facebook. It said in part, quote, "Today I want to offer my full support and endorsement of Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." Vice President Kamala Harris released a statement following Biden's endorsement. She called the decision a selfless and patriotic act and says he is putting the American people and our country above everything else. Harris also shared that she plans to earn and win the Democratic Party's nomination. She said in part, quote, "I will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda." Former President Donald Trump, who secured the Republican Party's nomination at the RNC convention this past week, reacted to Biden's decision on social media. He said in part, quote, "We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly." Former President Barack Obama also released a statement about Biden's announcement today. He said in part, quote, "Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Today, we've also been reminded again that he's a patriot of the highest order." The question on the minds of political observers tonight is whether today's development will bring the Democrats together or further divide them. It's unclear at this point what the nomination process will look like or when it will happen. WRAL Capitol Bureau Chief Laura Leslie joins us live in studio with a look at whether Democrats are likely to unite behind this. Vice President Harris.
Julian, today's announcement throws the nominating process into question. It'll be up to Democratic delegates to decide who it'll be. And at the moment, we don't even know who else might be angling for consideration. Biden's endorsement today gives Harris a strong boost, but it's not a slam dunk. At a fundraiser in Raleigh last night, state Democrats like Congresswoman Deborah Ross said the party will come together behind whoever the nominee is.
I'm a yellow dog Democrat. I'd vote for a yellow dog over a junkyard dog any day. This is not about Biden. This is about saving our democracy.
After President Joe Biden dropped out today and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, Ross praised Biden's decision and said the path forward is clear. We must unite behind Vice President Kamala Harris. Many other elected leaders, like former President Barack Obama and Governor Roy Cooper, also praised Biden's decision, but stopped short of endorsing Harris. DNC Chairman Jamie Harrison said the party will undertake a transparent and orderly process to move forward with a candidate who can defeat Donald Trump in November. Biden's endorsement will carry weight with delegates who were pledged to him, which is the majority of them. But that's not a slam dunk. They can choose to support someone else. My intention is to earn and win this nomination, Harris said in a statement. Still, Catawba College political scientist Michael Bitzer believes the Democrats will nominate Harris, especially after Biden's endorsement. Black women voters are the most reliable base the party has.
If you bypass the first African-American woman to potentially head a ticket, you are going to have to deal with a core base of the Democratic Party and the potential retribution that could bring as well.
Could depend on how and when the nominating process takes place. It usually happens at the convention, but the DNC doesn't even start until August 19th, and some party leaders say that's too long to wait for certainty. They're pushing to hold a so-called virtual nomination vote in early August. Julian?
Laura, so many questions out there. Thank you so much. Well, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper responding to Biden's announcement in a statement saying in part, quote, President Biden has cemented his place among our nation's finest presidents. I'm deeply grateful to call President Joe Biden my friend, and I thank him from the bottom of my heart for his service to our great nation. Cooper is facing a lot of the national attention right now after two people close to the Biden-Harris campaign said he would be a contender to join the Harris ticket if she became the Democratic nominee. WRAL's Carly Haynes is live outside the governor's mansion with more details on Cooper's chances. Carly.
Well, Julian, the man through these doors is on a short list of possible vice presidential candidates, mainly from swing states. But unlike some of those other candidates, Governor Roy Cooper is coming to the end of his term, which could free him up just in time. North Carolina could be represented on the presidential ticket. WRAL state government reporter Paul Spey says if Kamala Harris is selected as the presidential nominee, there's a real chance Governor Roy Cooper could be her running mate.
We first started seeing reports about a couple weeks ago when, pressure was mounting on President Biden to drop out.
The logic boils down to a few reasons. For one, he's a Democrat proven to win in a right-leaning battleground state. That could pull more people in North Carolina and conservatives across the country.
Trump only won North Carolina by about 1 percentage point back in 2020. And Cooper won that very same year. So he sort of pulled this magic trick of being able to win at the same time as Republicans. And he's been doing that throughout his career. And so that's one thing that might make him appealing to the Democrats is, being able to win over some conservatives or some swing voters.
Spey says Cooper has also made it through his political career without major scandals, making him a safer pick, a familiar face that could build inroads across the aisle. WRAL did reach out to Cooper's team today. We haven't heard back, but so far Cooper has avoided talking about this, choosing instead to voice his support for President Joe Biden. Carly Haynes, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
For more on Governor Roy Cooper's prospects as a Democratic running mate, go to our in-depth story at NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. You'll also find a link to a special episode of the WRAL Daily Download breaking down Cooper's chances. Well, other politicians are also reacting to President Biden's decision to drop out tonight. Senator Ted Budd said in part the Democratic Party tried and failed to cover up President Biden's cognitive decline, but they cannot cover up the record high inflation, open borders, and international chaos created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. North Carolina Democratic candidate for governor and state attorney general Josh Stein said, quote, President Biden is a true patriot. His decision today exemplifies his commitment to always put his country before himself. I thank him for his remarkable service to our nation. Republican candidate Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson has not commented at this time. House Speaker Mike Johnson is one of the politicians calling for Biden to step down from his role as president as well. He said in a statement, quote, if Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he is not fit to serve as president. He must resign the office immediately. There now is so much uncertainty surrounding President Biden's decision to drop out of the presidential race. David McLennan, political science professor at Meredith College, joins us live now to break down what's next. Professor, we thank you for your time. Let's get right into it. Now, Biden has previously said that if he was suffering some type of health ailment, he would step down. That does not seem to be the case, but are some wondering if he should step down at this point?
Well, it's a question, and you're hearing Republicans say this a lot. You're not hearing Democrats say this, and nobody on the Biden cabinet is raising this. This really is pretty similar to LBJ leaving the race in 1968. Although he left for Vietnam, he was in poor health too and made it through his entire presidency.
All right, there's so many questions about this one as well. What about all that campaign funding money that President Biden has raised? What happens to that now?
Well, with Kamala Harris, it's much easier. She was on the official paperwork, and they filed the paperwork to change the name from Biden-Harris to just the Harris campaign with the FEC this afternoon. If they choose someone else, there are a lot of questions.
Let's talk about voter turnout. Will a new Democratic candidate bring more people to the polls?
That's a real question. Certainly Joe Biden's approval rating had gone down. His numbers were pretty low. Almost anyone on the ballot, Kamala Harris or some other Democrat's going to create some enthusiasm. How long that enthusiasm lasts, will it last until Election Day? We'll have to wait and see about that.
All right, there's so many races out in North Carolina. What about the impact on other Democratic races on the ballot here in North Carolina?
Well, having a stronger person at the top of the ticket, someone who is bringing out votes, is going to help people down ballot. So you would think that Harris or another candidate would add some enthusiasm to Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters, and that would help from the governor's race all the way down the ballot.
Yeah, let's stretch that question out a little bit more, Professor. We've reported that Cooper could be a VP candidate if Harris were the nominee. Now, would that be enough to help Democrats win North Carolina?
Well, research tells us that the vice president helps about 3% in his or her home state. So if this race were to tighten up, the Cooper vice presidential nomination could, in fact, be enough to swing the race toward the Democrats.
So many questions, and what a busy, busy day. Thank you again, Professor McLennan, for joining us, political science professor at Meredith College, always breaking it down for us. Thank you once again. All right, moving on, our coverage of this historic day continues next with WRAL's Aaron Thomas.
Yeah, and just ahead, I am live after speaking with North Carolina voters who are now sounding off about what it means for VP Harris potentially becoming a presidential nominee.
And definitely, certainly a busy day for us. Thankfully, radar at the moment. Weather-wise, we're looking okay. There's a few light showers across the area. We're going to get you an update, though, on when we could see many more rain and storm chances headed this way coming up.
Welcome back. President Joe Biden has endorsed his current vice president, Kamala Harris, for president. Now, Harris is the first woman, black person, or person of South Asian descent to serve as vice president. She would also be making even more history if she receives the Democratic Party nomination. WRAL's Aaron Thomas spent the evening speaking with voters about how today's announcement impacts them at the polls. Aaron.
Yeah, Julia, well, you can take a look behind me. We're here at Dix Park. A lot of people just wanting to enjoy a Sunday afternoon. But, like many of us, we were surprised to get that push alert on our phones to find out that President Biden would not be seeking the re-election. When we asked many of the voters that you see out here what they thought about Vice President Harris potentially becoming the presidential nominee, they say even with an endorsement from President Biden, they hope for other options come November. This group of young voters recalls the shock they felt after hearing about President Biden dropping out of the presidential race in November. Not long after making the announcement on Sunday, he endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him on the ticket. We ran into Jean at Dix Park and asked the Durham-based voter about the idea of Harris becoming the Democratic presidential nominee.
I know that Joe Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris. But I am hopeful that we might get another candidate. Kamala's great. She's great. However, I still remember those days when Bernie was interested in politics and becoming president. So I hope he comes back to the ticket. His policies were very favorable for those of us who are young and working or in schools.
Others, like Tom Bone from Johnston County, question her likability.
So I think it's the politically correct thing to do. I think for the party, it's probably one of the weakest candidates they have because she's just not liked.
So you can hear from the voters that we spoke with this evening. A lot of them are cautiously optimistic about Vice President Harris potentially becoming the presidential nominee. You want to stay with us on our late news beginning at 10 on Fox 50. We're going to have a political analysis from a political science expert about what voters will need to do for whatever stakes are coming up in November. But right now on WRAL.com, you can take a look at where Vice President Harris stands on key issues such as abortion and immigration. Aaron Thomas, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
That discussion will continue, but let's bring a different discussion on the table right now. Anthony, we are seeing some rain in some areas in the Triangle.
Yeah, it's not quite as active, Julian, as where we were yesterday evening, but just some very light showers starting to pop up for us. I want to talk about kind of what we're expecting here through the rest of this evening, and then we're going to go into our forecast for what is going to be a very busy week with many, many rain chances still on the way. So hopefully all of you have had a great weekend, hopefully able to relax just a little bit here despite a very busy couple of days. Let's talk about where we sit. You can see there are some showers and storms to our west right now. Very limited coverage across our viewing area. These are blink and you miss some kind of showers. Very hit or miss. Just a couple showing up right there. Southern Pines potentially right around the Triangle. They're so small at this point that radar's even having a hard time picking them up. So that's what we're going to look for here the next couple of hours. No big impacts to any plans out there this evening. Love this shot though. Look how cool that looks just as far as the clouds off in the distance. It's beautiful. You can see some of the kind of low hanging clouds. Almost looks like they're picking up on some moisture way up there. Those kind of dark colors right there. Again, hit or miss spotty showers through this evening. It is also a warm evening though. Just plain hot, if you will. 93 is what it feels like in Raleigh. Check out Clinton right now with all of the humidity that we have in place. It feels like 100 degrees currently, and that is still going to be with us through the next couple of hours if you are headed out. You look at Futurecast though, it's overdone. We're not seeing this widespread of coverage that it's trying to pick up on right now. But we go through the next couple of hours, just some isolated showers are with us through the majority of tonight up through about midnight, 1 o'clock or so. We're looking pretty good. But check out that next batch that comes in by the time we get into our Monday morning commute. This is something that the models have been advertising here pretty consistently. And I think as we pause this there at 8 o'clock in the morning, we will have some cloud cover out the door and we will have some scattered shower chances tomorrow morning. So it's going to be, I think, potentially a wet start for some of us out there in our Monday morning. We start off with temperatures low to mid 70s for us. A few storms coming through, 73 there in Rocky Mount, 74 in Goldsboro. And then very similar to us today, only a little bit more coverage. Our Monday also looks pretty unsettled. We start you off here. There's 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Again, just some isolated showers, maybe scattered showers across the area to start off the morning. And then through the day itself, we'll get some breaks. We'll get some more rain coming in. We'll get some breaks. That's going to be the story for us over the next probably 7 days, where we're not talking drenching rainfall, but enough where it's going to be kind of summer-like. There's 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We bump this ahead closer to that evening commute. You can see it still tracking some rainfall across the area. Temperatures, though, not too bad. 85 degrees. We're going to be cooler, relatively speaking, compared to where we were today. 82 there at 6 o'clock. But over the next 7 days, we are still looking at potentially 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, maybe 4 isolated pockets here. You can see there's a lot of percentages showing up on this map. To clarify that, I do think Thursday into Friday, that looks like kind of our wetter, consistent pattern, 80% chance there both of those days. Otherwise, Julian, we're looking at scattered storms every single day, 84 there into next weekend. We finally start to break up that pattern by Saturday and Sunday.
All right, thanks, Anthony. A terrible crash in Johnston County overnight killed 3 people. What we've learned about the victims, that's coming up. Plus, many more flight delays and cancellations across the U.S. 2 days after that global internet outage. Stay with us. We'll have more. Here's a live look at Southern Pines. You see the clouds there, and we're told that light showers are on the way. 3 people died in a crash that closed part of U.S. Highway 70 in Johnston County. The crash happened near Pine Valley Parkway outside Pine Level around 2 in the morning. Troopers tell us a driver in a pickup truck was driving the wrong way and hit another F-150 being driven by 21-year-old William McClung. 43-year-old Cameron Youngs, the wrong-way driver, died. McClung and a passenger in his vehicle, 53-year-old Mark Braswell, also died. Authorities believe alcohol was a factor in the crash. One man was shot at an apartment complex near Lake Boone Trail early this morning. You can see at least 7 Raleigh police vehicles at the crime scene in this video from the WRAL breaking news tracker. Now, one neighbor told WRAL she heard at least 2 gunshots. We're working to learn if the man survived and if anyone was arrested. The director of the U.S. Secret Service will testify before the congressional panel tomorrow about the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson and other top Republicans have called on Director Kimberly Cheadle to resign. Cheadle has said the buck stops with her, but that she will not resign. The Secret Service releasing a statement saying the agency is, quote, committed to understanding what happened before and during and after the assassination attempt to ensure it never happens again. More than 1,000 U.S. flights have been canceled for the 3rd day straight as airlines struggle to recover from a global tech outage that left thousands of passengers stranded at airports. More than 1,200 flights into, within, or out of the U.S. were canceled this afternoon, while more than 5,000 U.S. flights were delayed, according to the tracking website FlightAware. Tonight on NBC Nightly News, Lester Holt reports on the breaking news that President Biden is dropping out of the presidential race, what this means for the Democratic presidential ticket and the 2024 election. All of that's up next, right here on WRAL. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. We will see you later. Have a great evening.